tundra in the summer, while they were taking salmon from the rivers. But his father liked the roses, and Russell liked his father, so he tried liking the roses. All around the walls were pictures of Jesus. His father loved Jesus more than he loved the roses. When he was young, his father had told him about Jesus, and Russell had listened, but he didn't understand. He supposed the idea was something that came when you got old, the understanding of Jesus, and in the meantime, he looked at all the pictures and wondered what they meant. There was one in which Jesus had thorns on his head, and they were cutting into him and making him bleed. Russell asked his father why Jesus would want to do such a thing. "Because he is the Son of God, and is meant to suffer for your sins," his father said, which made no sense at all to Russell. The story of Jesus happened so long ago, back in the before time, and Russell couldn't remember doing anything wrong enough to make a man shove thorns in his head. But he said nothing against it. Jesus kept his father from drinking, in some way which he also did not understand, and that was good. When his father used to drink, things were all bad, and if Jesus kept that out of his life, even if he did it mysteriously, that was all right. But he got bored with the pictures around the walls showing Jesus with light in back of him and bleeding and carrying a cross. Even in the tiny bathroom where there was the bucket, there was also a picture of Jesus, and another hung over the stove. All the pictures were cut out of religious magazines which people outside had sent his father. 2 snow machines went by the house. They were moving fast, too fast to stop in the dark if something jumped out in front of them. Russell winced at the noise. Russell owned a snow machine, owned a motor sled, and he used it. But he didn't like snow machines, and used one only because he needed a means to get around, and he didn't have any dogs. There were almost no dogs in the village, just one team, owned by old Ugruk. And Ugruk didn't use them, but simply kept them for memories. Russell pulled on his felt duffel slippers and slipped them inside the rubber shoe packs that made up the outer boot. He had slept in his pants, and it took only a moment to pull the undershirt on and a sweater. He stepped out to the food cache in the dark. It was an elevated wooden hut filled with caribou and seal and fish meat. Earlier in the winter, the men and boys of the village had gone back into the hills on snow machines and found a herd of caribou, and they had worked around them with rifles, killing into the center. Russell and his father had taken 12 of them. Some others had killed 20 or more, and they brought the meat back on sledges pulled by the snow machines. Russell used a hatchet to chop off some slivers of caribou and a tiny bit of seal meat. He took them back in the house. On the wood stove was a pan, and he pulled it over onto the heat and threw in the seal and caribou meat. The frozen seal meat started to melt and give off oil, and soon the smell of the meat filled the room, and he liked that. He stood looking down at the pan, and when the meat was warm, still nearly raw, he took out a piece of caribou and put it in his mouth, and used an ulu, a short curved knife, to cut the meat just on the edge of his lips. He chewed and swallowed, then took another bite. Cutting it cleanly, chewing, staring at the stove, the pan, at nothing. "You should cook the meat longer," his father said, coming from the bathroom. "We do not eat it raw anymore." Russell said nothing, nodded, but took more meat. "There are small things in the meat to make you sick, small worms and bugs. When you cook the meat more, it kills them." "I was hungry." "Well, next time, eh?" Russell nodded. "Next time." His father watched the meat cook. "We used to eat everything raw, but now we have learned to cook it. That's one of the good things we learned."